Welcome to Enjoy the Collective. I'm Marseille. Join my guests and I as we chop up the realities of the creative industry. I'm so glad you're here, so let's get into it. We have on the couch today Jalade. He is a writer, photographer, and director. And we also have Stuart, who is a director, video editor, and content creator. Okay, how you guys feeling? Don't be nervous. We've seen this done.
You know what?
You were here last time.
You know what? Yeah, you're
because
right.
you were back there.
Exactly
you felt
that.
fine.
I'm usually behind the camera, so.
This is the thing. We're all usually behind the camera. We're usually all offset, and that's the point of this podcast. Really, is just to bring all the creatives that I know, like, in the foreground. I feel like we're too comfortable behind the scenes, and we don't get enough praise and celebration. So
that's okay.
No, it's not. It's not. So today, I really want to talk to you guys about the art of storytelling. Okay, and I think it might be good if, starting with yourself, like, how did you get into the scene? How did you get into the industry? How did you find yourself here?
There's. I'm gonna try and
Condense it.
Because like
Yeah.
I can't necessarily pinpoint like the sort of impetus behind why, but I think I've always been a storyteller in general since since I was a child. But being a visual creative wasn't necessarily in the books. It wasn't my choice. It was a thing that came when I was in college, and I just decided to go with it, and it's led me to where I am. I mean, I was even studying film because we went to uni together. I was studying film in uni, and even that was just like, all right, cool. I've been doing media for 2 years. Let me continue it for uni. So I think I've just coasted with it for a long time, but only in recent years have I really found the correlation between my initial desire to be a storyteller and the fact that I can tell stories in a visual way.
Yeah.
Getting into the scene is, I think that's a separate question in terms of like the scene versus how you got into it. So like, I mean, how I got into the scene definitely was a matter of networking and putting myself out there in terms of who's doing what, collaborating, and finding my way through. But I'd say maybe the genesis of me being a visual storyteller stems from the fact that I was a storyteller in general first, and then I just followed some left turns and right turns that came definitely through God and not me, because I can't explain anything. Though I studied it for a part of my life in uni where we met, and it was more like I'm just coasting with this thing because it seems to be a thing that I'm okay with, I'm interested in, but not knowing where I was going. And only in the last few years have I been able to look at the work that I've done or want to do and realize that, okay, cool, there's something here, but I can marry the visual element to my storytelling background in general, as opposed to me saying, I'm going to leave that behind and do something else. So yeah, the scene's a bigger kind of conversation.
Yeah. I think we'll get into that a bit later. And Stuart, what about you?
I did go uni. I think I've always been fascinated with business, funnily enough.
Okay.
I knew I was gonna work for myself. Like, I just knew from a very early, and then I was in school, I was fascinated with music and media. Those are the only two subjects I was good at.
Okay.
And then as for navigating the industry, how it started, I think I've just always been fascinated with history, or just the way stories are told. And then over time, I think within myself, I found ways to, like you said, I don't know how I execute, but coming up with an idea and knowing how to execute it, that throughout different projects is what I've just been doing for just slowly for years. Like, I've always seen things differently, and I've explained things differently, but articulating that through my work over the years, that's what it's been. So it's like, for me, it started off with like music videos and little stuff, but then I've always wanted more, and then it branched, literally the network just branched out. So just, as for networking, and I've always been curious, so like turning up to places like uninvited, or making myself
Great crashing.
apparent,
Say no
literally
more.
to make myself apparent, and that's what like other people just saw that in me, like, he's hungry, he's ready
he's
to,
on it.
he's making himself available. That's and then opportunities just started blowing up from there.
Cool. So then I guess when you said you were always interested in business, and I'm just wondering, what kind of fueled your passion for creativity generally? Like, what were some of the first things that introduced you to being a creator? So not necessarily in the industry you're in now, but like, I don't know. I find a lot of people it's music, but I'm just wondering.
Literally. So I think music. My first understanding of the industry was music. Like just seeing it firsthand was the influence from music and TV and film. So when you see, like, I'm fascinated with like the architecture of the music industry because it's just so taboo. We have such a great influence over the world, and we've seen all sorts of genres and different genres influencing other industries. And because I've always been just privy to that, it's like, how do you get your foot? Do you know what I mean? How do you get your foot in? How do you? And then slowly you realize it's like, well, I realized over the years there's a massive difference between like business 101 and your industry. Industry is like man-made, whereas business, you can do business for how many years and technically not be a part of your industry, and that's
wow.
That when I learned that, that's when it's like, oh wow, that's the
I think even as you're saying it, I'm like, yeah.
Once I was able to learn and like articulate that, that's when I realized, okay, cool, like we have to navigate this differently, because what I've noticed about the industry is there's no, I wouldn't say there's set rules because we all came in differently, but there's rituals. So it's like, for example, everyone's first gig or how we first came about wasn't cool, we all went uni, but how we first got that job, that first hustle, it wasn't conventional. It wasn't, let me write a CV, apply it here. We actually had to network and find that. It was through some sort of angle.
I always find that, like, especially as creators and when you're working, well, not even just freelance, but I don't know many people that have a very conventional route into their industry within the creative scene.
Literally.
But for yourself, Jalade, what would you say in terms of that initial moment or thing that introduced you to being a creator or creativity?
I say my mother. She, from what she tells me, and I'm inclined to believe, because she knows my earliest days better than I do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She says that I was always into books. I was reading from like 1, and I was always in books, and that makes sense. I'm a writer. I love literature. I love writing. I love what words can do, and I'm a poet as well. So it's like, even though poetry came way later in the game, it was definitely a thing that stemmed from my love of literature and worlds that can be built from words. Like, I love the fact that people could put these things on paper and I'm visualizing it. And it would be years later till I realized there was a correlation between the fact that I could see words and visualize everything. I could hear, feel everything, which is credit to the writer. But then when I got into film, it was the same thing. It was like, when people are telling me the ideas, I'm like, I see it. I see it already. Like, I see it. And like you said with music, I think music was a key thing. I remember I moved to Nigeria when I was about 6 years old, and I was at my uncle's house, and he had cable TV and everything. You know, if they had cable, you're balling. So he had cable TV, and it was a school night, and MTV Bass was on, like the original MTV Bass in the 90s. If you know, you know. And this music video came on for "Got Till It's Gone," Janet Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
And to this day, that's my favorite music video of all time. Like, it's nothing comes close.
She's like legendary. And I'm seeing like her content circulating a lot on socials at the moment.
Because people are understanding the value of what she brought to the scene. But this video, right, I remember seeing this video. I was about 6 or 7 years old, right? And in a way, I was too young to really understand the value of it. But there was something in this video that was showing me all black people in a very beautiful way. Like, it was just very like poetic and stunning. And it would sit with me for years in terms of how do you make that happen? And so even now, as a visual creative, I just want to make art. Like, there's a business side to it, which I'm developing because I'm seeing a purpose and a need, but I just want to make art. And if I can make art like that, you know, whether it's something I wrote and turn it into that, because I felt what I watched, I felt. And that was it. It was like, okay, I want to create things that make people feel something. That's it. I'm in the business of making people feel. So for me now, it's like, okay, cool. Writing makes me feel something, but I want to write and make people feel something. So poetry was like, when I was doing poetry, I didn't know I could make people feel something until they told me. So I was like, oh, interesting. And then I got into film, and people were like, oh, we love how you were so human with it. So, oh, okay, cool. So I'm staying true to this thing that makes me want to stay in the field.
And I think it's really evident in your work as well. Like, like, even in some of your photography, it's just so raw. And, you know, a lot of the subjects aren't necessarily doing something. It's like you've captured them in a moment, and it's almost like I'm understanding them. I think you're really good at having... it's crazy to me just to think like how we're able to tell stories even in a still.
Yes.
And I think when I think about like both of you guys' work, I'm wondering what are the stories that you want to tell? So you spoke about wanting to make people feel. So I guess it's a twofold question. Who do you create for? And what are the stories you want to tell? Intentional.
No, fair question, good question. I create for myself mostly because I come from a background that didn't support creativity. Like, whole time my mum, but I grew up in Nigeria, and Nigeria was, especially in the 90s.
It's not a thing.
You're an outlaw. I was writing stories in secret, especially in boarding school. I was like, that was me, like, and hold tight the friends who rocked with me and held my secret close, because it was literally outlawed, like, I remember when I now came back to the UK and teachers were like, oh, you'll be a writer, we've got a writing club. I was like, huh?
Like, this is celebrated here?
You want to help me do, not to say it still didn't come with its challenges, but it became a thing of, I need to do this for myself because of the many years I was repressed for not being able to do it for myself. Okay. So even till now, it's like, I'm an artist for me. If you rock with the work that I do, I appreciate it, but it's not even for you first. Now I'm seeing that there are stories in the world that I want to tell on behalf of other people or with other people. And there's a purpose in terms of like, how can I use the art to encourage the young to believe that they can do this too and change the culture around what it means to have a creative career? Because I still feel like there's a lot of like negative stuff coming from like our culture, especially as Black people. Yeah, you're not seen as a viable.
It's not a credible career.
It's not a credible career until you're making like the millions. Yeah. And I'm like, well, because I got into this through, again, some left turns, but also my mother, again, she saw in my area there was this local Black production company that were upskilling young people in media and giving them work. And she was like, go. And I was like, I don't want you to go. I said, fine. And because they taught me everything I know in terms of like the foundation, as I've grown, I'm like, not only do I owe them a lot, I'm like, I want to return the favor. I want to do the same thing. So a lot of my art is like, it's a means to an end in terms of I'm building enough clout, notoriety, so that when I now open up a sort of institution or business, there's enough of a reputation to be like, cool, give them what they need, and I can bring in people to get that same value I got when I was younger and just keep it going in a sustainable way. Even if I'm not the one running it, it's like, I started it, but the right people are doing the right thing. So the art, everything's a means to an end. The end of community and
I think that's really important. And I think it's like, I do want to touch on, I want to go back to that. So I'm going to put a pin in that. Let Stuart answer, and then, because I want to come back to that.
It's very interesting because the start of my career, I would say, I create for myself. It was always me. It was always for myself. But then towards the end, when I got the grips of like how business works with creativity, that's when it was like I realized, you know what? As a director, you're not always executing your own ideas, and that can be daunting. It can be frustrating because that's like, sometimes I feel like I'm in between a rock and a hard place. Whereas, but then I bettered my efforts, so that's when I really, now I think there's two things I'm always trying to gauge with my work, regardless of the project, like the story, the importance of the story that's being told, and there's a thin line between controversy and thought provoking. Okay. So I always want to provoke thought. I just want people to think differently after they've seen my work. So regardless of the genre it's originally my idea or not, sometimes I'm given a brief Sometimes it is my own story, but I always just want to inspire or make people think differently. And because not every project, your ideas will be your own. It's almost like, how can I put it? The way I would, if I've got a ridiculous budget for lighting, I'm gonna light because that's what I'm in control of. The lighting's gonna be thought. Do you know what I mean? I'm gonna make you think, how did they do that? It's always, how did they do that, or why was that done? Regardless of if there's other angles I can't change. So, and then away from the things I'd like to create is, I just want to tell more of our own stories.
When you say our own, what do you mean?
So this is a few years, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, I said to myself, I'm going to try and stop complaining. Like, there's no more, like, you know how like we criticize, not even criticize, but I'm grateful for all of our content that comes out over the years. Like, so we've got your Top Boys, your Intense, your Blue Stories, I love them all.
Yeah.
But I know just as many people that's like a small fraction of the black people I know. Right. Do you know what I mean? Let me say the representation. And we not even, I don't want to go into deserve, but I think I know more lawyers than I do.
Right, gangbangers.
More doctors and more the engineers and more, so it's just that balance. So whenever I see I don't want to say a bad representation, but an indifferent representation of...
a limited representation.
Yes, a limited, that's the perfect word, a limited representation of us. I just want to put something else in the ecosystem. I just want to balance it. I don't even want to criticize it because we already know how hard it is just to get a project off the ground in the first place. So it's not even, I don't want to spend too much time criticizing or this could be this or this is authentic or this is it. That is someone's story at the end of the day. That is somebody's story. So I just want more of our own and in different stories. So,
I think I'm definitely with you like on that, because I think there was a time when I was just really complaining about it and just feeling like I'm just so tired of even like the reality content.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it just being really like argumentative. And I'm just like, we have so much more to offer as creatives, as black people, as women. There's a greater representation that we can have, and wanting to, similarly to you, do something instead of talking. Because I think we all have platforms on social media where we can be doing the most, chatting here and there, doing chatty patty, but what are we actually doing?
And that's my stance. Like with any opportunity I try to get, I just want to balance it doesn't, even if it doesn't get the views it's supposed to, it's in the ecosystem.
It's there.
It's out there. So, because it's like when people say, well, what about this sci-fi? It didn't have the budget as this. Do you know, it didn't have the same promo as X, Y, and Z, but we need to just shed light on everything else that's there. And I think I've been more intentional moving forward with the work I try to develop, because I've got some sentimental ideas. So like, I know I don't need no feedback for this. I'm telling this. Do you know what I mean? When I get the money for this, I'm just gonna make it happen. And then there's other ideas where it's like, yo, pay me, I'll make it happen. And it's finding the balance between those two.
Business.
Literally.
It is.
I stopped pitching a while ago. Like, I know, like, unless I've done my research for a specific project and I know I'm going to be well received and I build a good enough relationship. If it's between someone else, go with someone else. It's not a...
Interesting.
I'm a bit like that as well, though.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I feel like, not that that I'm above like putting myself out there, but it's knowing that I know what I do, I know my voice, and I know what I bring to the table. And if you want to work with me, you will, and if you don't, you don't. And I'm okay with that, because I will go and find the things that do you know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be like a sour thing. It's just, I think you can spend a lot of time, especially so with design in the early days when I used to do like contracts, you're working with different recruiters and they'd be like, yeah, well, my client needs to see this, so you're tailoring your portfolio for this, you're tailoring it for that, tailoring your CV for that. And I was like, I'm tired. This is who I am. This is my voice. This is what I like to do.
You're not wrong.
And if our voices align, and I think over the years, like, you know, I recently was interviewed about like creating legacy and how we do that with our clients. And for me, it's like, you have something to say and you think I'm the best person to help you say it. Let's work together and use our voices to to make this thing known or say what it is we need to say. But I'm not gonna be like running around trying to like here I am, because my energy can be put somewhere else.
Use.
You're not
For me.
wrong. Yeah, yeah.
I learned that. I learned that a little while ago, and it's what I'm even more excited about. I've read some more books which made me double down on that, like how to do it to the best of my ability. Because I used to think something was wrong with my pitch. I used to make sure my treatments were flawless. They looked like a graphic designer made them. I went to that extent. Like I collect magazines. I love magazines. I love the art form of photography. I use that to influence all of my work.
Right.
So whether it's a music video, I would look at I'll be looking through a Vogue or a Wonderland or whatever magazine I've bought, and I'd say to myself, if this was a moving image, what would be the next frame? What would be the next composition? And I'll use that to inspire. And then the artist is none the wiser. His music video is inspired by the Chanel campaign.
right.
He's none the wiser. Or I'll take like museum trips, and I'll like surrealism and different types of, even like the National Gallery and just different. I'll look at these broad paintings. It's like when everyone was decided to go to war, someone was making art. Like, you know, like, so these are where the influences that I wish to draw from. I want to know where this mind frame is, where this mindset is, and then try to implement that inside my work. And it's, like you said, people want to gauge those conversations because they want to know how our mind works, but it's almost like a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's no longer this stuff. It can be taught to a degree, but it's a lifestyle, because on an odd day I'll just walk, like I'll make sure I've done a museum trip. I'll make sure I religiously buy magazines. So it's because this is just what we do. They're wondering how can we monetize that? How can we? You know, they just want to pick your brain about the process, and it's like, this is who is. We're cultured as well as we're educated, and they see it in our work, and they want to monetize that. But I think what the industry does every now and then is the convergence between. I've noticed a lot with especially great black creators, because I feel like everyone is at the top of their game, like within their networks. So you're literally picking from the best of the best of the best of the best.
Right.
So who is the right fit? Everyone knows we're capable of doing the job. Is what, like I said, what translates. Do you want me to tell your story? Yeah. Do you want me to execute that? Like, and that's where the relationships come in now. That's where it's. But
the issue with that for me is like crabs in a barrel.
Exactly that.
And one thing I found, so my career has been interesting because, well, everyone's career is interesting, but I find mine's been different to many of my peers, because when I came out of uni, first of all, university didn't prepare me for anything in the real world.
Zero.
I'll be very frank. For some, they got more from the course than I did, but, you know, to each their own. But it didn't mention a thing about being freelance. Not a word.
Yeah, always working for someone.
Never heard that word until I finished uni, and I was like, you know, I was like, okay, you told me I'd be a runner, but that didn't happen. I remember when I graduated, my mother, again, whole time mom's like, if I win awards, she's getting shouts like crazy. She told me to write a letter to the guy who came to give the graduation speech. He was the dean of the National Film and TV School at the time. His name was Nick Powell, who was apparently a well-known British director. Okay. I wrote my letter because she made me do it. And we graduated late that year because our uni was just weird. We graduated in like November or something.
What?
Yeah, even though I finished uni like June, July.
Weird.
But I got a call one morning in December from Nick Powell, and I was like half asleep. I was like, oh yeah, what's up? And he goes, well, what do you want to do? I said, I just want to tell stories and film stuff. He goes, well, I could tell you to come to our school, but it's expensive and I don't think it's really worth your time. And I was like,
are we allowed to have that on camera?
I'll keep it a buck. I'll keep it a buck. And I was like, aren't you meant to be, you know, selling your school? He goes, and he said, well, yeah, there's some goodness to it, you know, but in my experience, the best thing for you to do is to go out there and film. Whether or not he was trying to like, you know, handicap me or not, I can say he was right. What I decided to do was open up myself to just whatever was out there. And to that extent, international work came. So I was barely in London doing work. So I never really felt like crabs in a bucket, because I was like, well, most of my work isn't coming from this country that doesn't seem to want me anyway.
Yeah.
All these people that are calling me, and these weren't even companies, these were like mostly individuals.
Yeah.
Saying from South Africa, come do this, but we love your work. Like we haven't got the most amount of money, but we'll
Come
pay.
through.
And I'm like, of course I'll go. Because you care.
Exactly
You
that.
care.
Yeah.
Most times like imposter syndrome, I'm like, why me? But it's like, no, you did your research on me
and
to say, I want you to come do this. And I was like, well, in which case, maybe the crabs in a barrel mentality comes from the fact that we forget there is a wider world outside our community.
Literally a conversation I was having with another creative where it's like, you can almost feel like the world is London.
Yeah.
And you get stuck here
Honestly.
fighting to be recognized, to be seen, to be valued. The world is so much bigger than London, and there's so much more to say than just the stories that are in London.
Honestly.
And so I do think, and this is why, like, I agree with you, Stuart, about like the pitch and thing. Like, I'm just not really on that. Like,
You don't really have to when you know there's like there's space out there for
there's
people to
space,
be like.
there's room for us.
there's
There's room
room.
for everybody. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm thinking like switching gears a little bit and to keep it light, because I feel like we've been like really like like, what do you love about being on set?
Boy, I love teams. I like to think I'm a very democratic director.
Okay.
Because I wasn't a director first, I was like everything else, and then
Right.
I was like, okay, I eventually came to directing, and so because I have an experience of almost every area, when I'm on set, I'm very involving of people, especially at the heads of the department. I'm like, cool, interesting. What's your take on this? I'm very much like that. I want to make sure that everyone's well. Like, have you eaten? I'm that kind of guy because you're people. So the thing I love about sets is just the people, and developing relationships, real relationships, not like I don't know your name and I'm going to leave without knowing your name because you're not my AD. It's like, I care.
Yeah.
So I love people.
Okay.
I love collaboration, and I love what people just bring that enhances what I might have in mind.
Yeah. What about you?
What I love about set is same the people, but I love the hierarchy.
Okay.
So it sounds weird, but because I've played so many different roles,
Yeah.
like I love, and the genres change, the mood changes with the genres.
Yeah, true.
And that's
True.
what I've noticed the most. Like, for example, on feature film sets, these people they're your family. These are your distant cousins. Like, regardless of what happens, you have to like on the best sets anyway. You have to respect everybody because we're on this job for the next 3 months, 9 months, however long the job is, and we're gonna be at different heights of it. So we have to become familiar with each other. We have to, and then even though everyone's specializing in different like job roles, the relationships on set, like
values.
the values,
Yeah.
exactly that. It's literally like a massive family, and that's what I love about like the feature film sets. On commercials, I love the way the profession, the environment that's been provided. So it's when I was working with certain directors, I've done a lot of work last year with Simon Denzel, like in Tinderbox, and it's just he's amazing
He's
director.
really nice.
He's wicked. On set, like we had, usually you've got first ADs, which are like they're very dictatorship.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had
Wait,
this
can we
guy-
just say break down AD for like those
Cool.
who don't know?
A first AD is assistant director.
Okay.
These people are in charge.
They run the ship.
They run the
Next
ship.
to the producer, yeah.
Yeah, next to the producer, they make sure. Next to the producer and production coordinator, they make sure everything's on time.
Okay.
People that you stick to the schedule, and everything from the shots are being like executed that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So traditionally,
Don't
on all
mess.
sets, regardless of the genre, your first AD is a madman. They're shouting like
Or mad
crazy.
woman,
Mad
yeah,
woman,
yeah.
mad woman. They're shouting like crazy. How would it? Like, you do not want to be. That's like the head.
You don't want to be in
teacher.
their firing
You do-
line.
Yeah.
Okay,
literally.
cool.
But after the set's done, they switch. Like, hey guys, how you doing?
I appreciate you. I know I raised my voice.
Yeah,
Like, literally,
yeah.
that it's wild. But I was on this, and the pressures were high because I was doing the offline edit. It was for I was
okay.
doing the offline for it was co-op. It was one of the, and I haven't done this before, the pressure. So, and then DIT, they had one girl running around doing like, she was the clapper, she was the DIT.
Wow,
So
wow,
I knew
wow.
I wasn't going to get any material until she's backed it up twice.
Yeah.
So 2 shuttles and a backup, and then I was getting a lick. So I was literally helping her do her her work so I can start my work.
Okay.
Even though it was literally a 10-second ad campaign, like TV ad, and then you had the 2 minute for online.
Still a lot.
High pressures,
Yeah.
but everyone was so cool, calm, collected, and professional.
Okay.
I forgot the guy's name. We had this amazing black first AD, and it's just like I've never been in an environment where everyone is so cool. Besides our own personal, but like,
And you feel like that came from him? Like, does the AD
So-
set the standard
yes,
of the...
exactly.
Set the
And
tone.
that's when I
Set
realized
the
it's
tone.
a choice. That's when I realized it is actually your choice.
To be
You don't
what
have
character
be
you have to be.
screaming
Facts.
all day. You don't have to be.
Facts.
As long as you've prepared and prepped everyone,
Okay.
you've built real relationships.
Yes.
He was making sure he knew everyone's
I feel like I
names.
know who this guy is.
Yeah, like
I feel like I know who this
well
guy is
dressed,
already.
always in a thin suit. Like
Thomason.
I think so.
No.
Like-
okay, say no more. Say no
Like,
more.
but it's
Okay.
once
okay.
I saw that, I feel like, so why? Like, it just opened up a whole idea in my mind of, you know what? I know the environment I'm gonna set for all my sets moving forward now, because I thought it was mandatory to be wild. And no,
Don't
it's
have to
not.
be.
It really is not. You can
Okay.
the pressure could be as higher than, and everyone can still be harmonious and excellent. You can be stressful in your role, but don't call no one unless you absolutely need help. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like a few months ago, last month we did the dating pool.
Yeah.
That was stress. Listen, I was out of my depth.
Okay.
Like the camera assistant and that, but because like what I love at Renaissance, it's a family environment. It's like everyone just stepped up to the plate. Like it didn't matter what, and that's when I learned. It's like moving forward in all of my sets, I'm
That's-
gonna make sure I have a comfortable environment. Even if something goes wrong,
Yeah.
you feel comfortable enough to say, you know what, I need help. Like people don't feel scared when things go
Yeah.
wrong. It's a team effort. Nobody's
Yeah.
above the project.
Thank you, guys. I have loved talking with you, and I've loved this conversation. And I feel like with this conversation, because it's something I have a level of understanding with, but I'm not immersed in your space at all. Like, I feel like I've been able to like sit back and really be like,
I hope I can't remember half of what I've said, but you know, I hope
no,
some of it was
because
useful.
it was authentic. It's flowing, and so like for me, it's really just being able to like create the space where this conversation is happening, and I get to be first privy to it.
Yeah,
do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So I want to thank you guys.
No, thanks
and
for having us.
yeah,
Thank you
I would
for
love to have
having
you
me.
again.
Oh.
Can I want to say a huge thank you to my guests today. I want to thank you guys for joining us. Big shout out to Renaissance for providing this amazing space. If you've liked this video and our conversation, then like, comment, and subscribe, and we will